Hello, I'm Bill Seaton. Going to read, I think maybe two prose pieces. This is called Annual. I love the sound in here. You know, it makes everything you say sound very portentous.
Yeah,
this little bit of an echo.
It's even more. It's a total different sound here than when I'm sitting over there.
Annual report. I am pleased to address the members of the board of directors, our corporate executives, even you small fry shareholders and hangers-on, and to announce to you another banner year for the Amalgamated Consolidated Holding Company, the ever-swelling big daddy of the New York Stock Exchange, compared to which yesterday's multinationals are mere pikers. Our prodigious growth has been continuous since we decided to cut out the middle term in merchandising. Why sell people a product promising them pleasure when we can market pleasure itself? We realized the Christers had been making millions for millennia with a simple verbal promise of future eternal bliss, marketed with just enough mumbo-jumbo to hook the chumps. What would the profit be for the provider that could actually deliver bliss, metered and invoiced? Advertisers had used hit and miss psychology crap. We went straight to the far more dependable biology. Bit of history may be useful for new employees. We proceeded from the historic experiments of Olds and Milner, which established the territory of the pleasure center in the hitherto untracked regions of the nucleus accumbens. Inspired by the image of their rats frantically pressing the neural reward bar, Delgado, Heath, and others then extended the work with human subjects. Using prisoners at first, they moved fearlessly into new frontiers, the ventral pallidum, the orbitofrontal cortex, leading to the culminating stage of science, the very jewel of civilization and crown of creation, the hugely profit-making corporation. Our patented process implants neural electrodes into customers adjudged Class B material by our underwriters, who have discovered either approved credit lines or exploitable productive capacity, and then provide first-rate medical supervision for our clients' twilight years. Now, many Class Bs, of course, prove weak-minded, auto-culls we call them, having thought they could joy pop along a spell, taking just a weekend zap or two and maybe an extra when feeling low. Before long, they're stretched out in one of our hostels, paying luxury hotel rates for a shelf in a room with thousands of their fellows, catheterized with IVs, bags of various organic fluids, intake and outgo, hanging all over the place. The minimum wage workers we hire, those that is from Class D, without sufficient economic resources to be our customers, become our agents in what is popularly called the House of the Lamos. Unfortunately, they can't possibly cope. The more enterprising, dubbing themselves 49ers, specialize in digging out gold dental work, for they know we can't be bothered about such petty pilferage. Eventually, they wheel the corpses to the back wall where the stench never stops. But if we can keep the heartbeat going until the assets and credit are maxed out, we have succeeded. We have overcome the looming problem of a labor shortage for the production of our own commodities. After years of research by our own Dr. Ungeheuer, we developed the precise balance of positive and negative stimulation needed to maintain a functioning production worker. This proprietary algorithm for managing Class C individuals is presently our most valuable intellectual asset. A stream of stimuli, mixing shocks of pain with waves of bliss, will keep the subject functioning for a 16-hour workday. At a stroke, we have eliminated the unnecessary costs of labor. Our industrial employees need no clothing, no home. Seated on a chamber pot, they are nourished by a wholesome vegan diet administered by computer-controlled technology we purchased from the foie gras folks. We do face challenges in the coming fiscal year. There are pesky bands of hooligans throwing monkey wrenches in sectors 19 and 24. Pestilence is sweeping sectors 9 through 12 to the extent that their territory must be quarantined from all decent society, and the vicious and godless Chinese conglomerate is expected next to turn against us after having transformed the UK into an island of their own drones, following the karmically inevitable Second Opium War, in which daily doses of the drug were forced into every Briton until they capitulated, begging for more. We shall rise to meet these difficulties as we have in the past, using any means necessary to accomplish our mission, for we are the defenders of civilization. You may rest assured that were Jesus, the real Jesus, not your turn-your-cheek namby-pamby alive today, he would be a shareholder, a major shareholder, I have no doubt. And now, I see the hors d'oeuvres are coming. I invite you all to enjoy your dinners in the confident knowledge that these luxurious dishes are an alchemical transmutation compounded of the blood, sweat, and tears of our natural inferiors according to God's holy plan. Our success is the proof that Providence stands with us in the tireless pursuit of profit. Thank you.
Rock on.
Thank you.
No, read
Well-
the second one.
All right, you mentioned the imaginary books. That's as long, I'm afraid.
Well, go ahead, let's start.
I'll do that. I'm easily persuaded. A shelf of imaginary books. My home having limited space, I have found it convenient to house a portion of my library within my mind. The shelves there of imaginary books never need dusting. Their contents are besides all mine, as opposed to the chunky, palpable volumes I must share with their authors, even in a way with previous readers. This single parentage leaves the unreal titles with a certain simplicity, but it lends them as well a kind of lightness due to their airy conception. Should these titles evanesce tomorrow, they are easily replaceable by any functioning fancy, in which case yours will do as well as mine. Though secondary sources for many of these authors are elusive, the reader might always find a good account in the literary history of St. John Lander's Hoops, who never objected to the public referring to him by his school nickname, Scoochie. His compendious, if dated, survey, The Long Landscape of Literature, I should say, treats every author here mentioned, and a select few are discussed in the more familiar and impressionistic essays of his Languors in the Library. On the shelf's left side, claiming chronological precedence, is a collection of Old English poetry, including the Song of the Swab, In Scudding Storms I Swept the Decks, and the devotional Mariner Christ, O steer my son by highest star, as well as a fragment of the Battle of Bull Kippen, quote, then came skirmish and slash, spar and set to. Awash in sibilant alliteration, the browser will turn with relief to gossipy revelations of Beowulf's character flaws in Unferth's Gede. The Middle English section includes the rollicking mystery plays treating the licorice of King Solomon and Noah at the Tavern, once performed as part of the observance of Corpus Christi by the people of Puckle Church in South Gloucestershire. Of interest to students of intellectual history is Gregory Grosseteste's De Philosophia Mundi and his Tractatus concerning the revision of Ptolemy's geography based on Arabic sources, bound with his equally erroneous works on optics, algebra, and beekeeping. Next is a fat volume from a towering figure of the later medieval period, Lawrence Lemon, including his bouquet of lovers' laments, including biblical and classical tales, replete with pathos and love-longing, and his dream allegory, The Battle Between the Scorpions and the Nightingales, which allegorically represents factions in the court of Richard II, the movements of the planets in the night sky, and a soap opera-like love triangle. On a lighter theme, Lemon also retold fabliaux, such as The Tale of Priscilla's Handyman and Thieving Tom Scores Again. A charming, if more obscure work, possesses the space next to Lemon's fat volume, the graceful tale-rhyme romance of The Knight of the Dolorous Tooth. Likewise anonymous, inspired by similarly unmerited suffering, the narrative of the life of St. Swithin details the bishop's mortification by providential bunions while making his diocesan rounds. Not included in the saint's hagiography are two songs discovered in faint notation in the margin of his copy of St. Bernard's Sermons on the Song of Songs, Herkne tu min wangas wan, and Bring Us in an Ocean of Ale, the latter sung yet today at the High Table in Oxford. The shelf's Elizabethan section includes Devereux Chumley's sonnet sequence Frumentum and Solicia, the delightful Latin lyric Thomas Filius Tibicine, that is Tom the Piper's son, and a selection of his drama containing the comic Never Too Much, a tragedy relating the lamentable reign of King Ubu and the unclassifiable Seasonable as Snow in Summer. Regrettably, none of these plays has ever been brought to the stage. The only historical records of their author concern his numerous prosecutions for debt and disorderly conduct. There follows a slim but complete book of the poems of the 17th century cavalier Sir John Cribbage, known for such delicate and melodious lyrics as Snipping the Tulips of Youth, A Meeting with the Milkmaid of Devon, and The Rose That Is Most Ravishing. His more spiritual poems include Sunk in a Cesspool of Sin, and one written in a more passionately mystical moment, Licking the Wounds of My Lord, of which Buxtehude made a moving chorale. There follows a volume of essays by Dennis Mowbray, first published in the periodical Chit Chat under the name Scriptor Stultus. The author, descended from 6 generations of younger sons, finding himself penniless on Grub Street, wrote such familiar favorites as The Cavalier Who Would Not Ride, Boiled Beef and Gray Peas, and A Late Stroll on Pall Mall. These appear in an edition along with a selection of pieces by his colleague Timothy Toff, using the name Jackanapes, including Dozing on Chevy Chase, Advice Better Given Than Taken, and The Most Picturesque Beggar in Covent Garden. With the advent of neoclassicism, or the 18th century now, and the reign of heroic couplets, came Jonas Dryasdust, writer of the literary satire Dr. Asinus and his disciples, the philosophical musings of the nature of things, and such brief occasional pieces as Mrs. Lovejoy's Nosegay and Tossing a Bone to Flora's Fido. His essay on the poet's profession stresses his concern with craft, quote, just as any fool may be shown to advantage, with sufficient polish, even the dullest of sententiae may be brought to sparkle anew. Oliver Wickham, the melodious Finch of Staffordshire, was an early suicide, but first composed a revealing allegory, The Palace of Indulgence, the topographical survey, The Potteries, and short pieces such as A Lofty View of Stoke-on-Trent and an ode on desuetude. Toward the 18th century's end came the chilling mysteries of Mrs. Cudworthy's Lost in Italian Mists and the Jesuitical Pirate, as well as several anonymous novels from the Athena Press, Convent Ruins, and Cries from the Old Castle. The collected poetry of Miles Warnham marks a turn in poetic taste. Warnham is remembered for such favorites as Expostulation to a Clod, A Distant View of Lincoln Minster, and On Peckishness. He boldly announced his dissent from the prevailing style with his influential preface called The Harp with Fancy Freed, which advocated, quote, uplifting the mundane with a steam engine's afflatus. Later, in less energetic terms, Warnham described the process as, quote, tossing upon my subject a watercolor wash of tastefully dilute genius. For most of the 19th century, the influential poet laureate Lord Timothy Chumley enjoyed a popularity now long vanished based on early lyrics that appeared in Posies and Annual, such as Robin Hood's Gambit and the Nasturtium Speak. His metrical retelling of the life of Henry VIII, the giant of England's destiny, which suppresses all but the first of the monarch's marriages, has likewise aged poorly. His poems celebrating the Queen and her relatives and their many birthdays have never inspired anyone, not even a dissertation. Then, toward the end of the 19th century, one finds the works of the notorious Geoffrey Greville, better known by his nom de plume, Sylvester Sybaris, including the scandalous novels Ganymede in Soho and Lost in Lethe, and his little chapbook, a pamphlet really, Lavender Lyrics, the composition of which so exhausted the author he was obliged to spend the year 1897 receiving visitors from a bed trimmed all about in peacock feathers. The collector of imaginary books has little taste for the present, so the last volume, were it real, would have been published slightly over 100 years ago, and this is T.L. Cosgrove's dark modernist epic, The Cursed City. Quote, "The dank, dark nectar of the gutter is dripping on my spats." Presently, one day, one of the works from this shelf will be committed to paper, but not by me. These days, it is all I can do of a summer afternoon to recline on my sofa, having selected a volume from the conceptual shelf for review. My book will have the advantage of weightlessness, which facilitates reading supine. And when I do not fall into a doze, I find myself lifted into the ether by the author's precious turns of phrase and profound insights. Why, I almost hear the snorts of Pegasus, sounding rather like hexameters. Like dreams, however, these impressions are gossamer and are all but instantly blown away by the breeze of time. The remainder of one's own memories, knowledge, and taste, of course, last only minutes longer, but we each have a turn in the meantime at playing the part of Homo ludens and can rejoice that among our toys are marvelous words and curious books, almost aglow, prickly with palpable meaning. Okay, enough. Thank you.